Hello again, and welcome to War Stories, behind the scenes tales from the front lines of the media. I am your host, Tom Curley. Now, normally we do this with my co host, Garry Armstrong, veteran TV Boston newscaster, but today we have a special treat. We are doing it with my brother from another mother and another father and actually another religion, Garry Kiffel. We did it. Garry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tommy.
Well, as you can see, we're not. If I looked a little odd there, this is the fourth time we've tried starting this show because I kept calling Garry Armstrong, and I kept calling Garry Armstrong you.
I'm proud to
There's
be
no
called
difference.
Garry Armstrong. Hi, Garry.
So we've known each other forever. We knew each other from college. We worked together for what, like 40 plus years. We worked together at WCBS FM. Then we both got transferred to television, where we worked a lot of shows together. We did the Joan Rivers show together. We both have done the morning news and the evening news. And then, of course, you went on to be the beginning and ending. You were the sound effects guy for the David Letterman show for what, 17 plus years?
Oh, 23. There was pluses beyond
23.
17.
No
22
kidding.
years and 10 months from August of 1993, which means last century, until uh, May 20th of 2015. And it was the
Wow.
longest assignment I ever had at CBS. It was also a life changing uh, assignment, and it left a strong imprint on me. And I left a
Wow.
strong
That's,
imprint, I say, on and Dave and
oh,
that group.
absolutely. I used to go and visit you all the time and hang out in your, you had your own little sound effects booth. It was very, very cool. And you were sort of, I mean, you had a, what I was envious about your job is you had a real autonomy um, there. They gave you a lot of leeway to do, to do funny stuff. I mean, they would tell you what they wanted you to make as a sound effect, but you on your own, which always impressed me, you would on your own just add something and then just throw it at them. And it was, I mean, I was always great because you're a very, very funny guy, and that they allowed you to do that. I always thought was pretty cool. And I'll tell you a perfect example. This is always stuck in my head. You had uh, Samuel L. Jackson. They were promoting Shaft. I think he was the star of Shaft. And the bit that they wanted to do was every time Letterman picked up his coffee cup, the theme song from Shaft would play. Right? And it was funny, but you on your own realized they needed a sound effect for when he put the cup down. And when he put the cup down, all you heard was the last note of Shaft. And I remember watching it, and the audience just went crazy. So anyway, that was really great. So you're right. Now that I think about it, your main job was making the glass break every time he threw a card away, right?
Yeah, and it was almost never a scripted thing. That was an ad lib gesture that Dave brought to the show from NBC and the old show. And I spoke to Howard, who was Dave's sound effects man at NBC, and he gave me some basic rules. You talked about how Dave gave me a certain amount of autonomy, and I do have to say that he allowed me to play with him, and often in a slightly nasty way, all the time. And I had been told by Howard Vinitsky was the sound effects man there. And Howard told me on that one phone call that we shared Dave will let you play with him, and he'll do something, and then he'll do something, and then maybe you'll do something, and it'll get a laugh. And Dave eventually told me almost exactly that. He said, I'll do something, and then I'll do something, and then you'll do something, and it'll get a laugh, and it's free.
Yes. So tell us your story.
People always say to me, who was the best person you ever met there? And a few names do come up. And they're basically people you would expect them to be. One is Tom Hanks, and I can very briefly tell you why. On one of the many occasions that Tom was on The Late Show, and he was a very favorite guest of the show, and he was a friend of The Late Show and Dave. But Tom found himself in the basement and was outside my room and became intrigued by it. It was interesting looking, and he stuck his head in. So I gave him about 10 minutes of demonstration. It seems like 10, it was probably less. And he was just great. Oh, Garry, what's this? And gee, Garry, we could. And he kept, he was referring to me by my name after we met. And he was just, you know, it was your own imaginary moment with Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks was with me until a couple of his staff came in and said, Tom, we need you. They were very nervous and moving him along. And he left. And about 5 minutes later, a very agitated Tom Hanks came back and came into my room and said, Garry, I forgot to say goodbye to you. So thank you. And I had a good time with you. And I never forgot how kind, how genuine, and how caring this, I don't know, AAA lister star was to the sound effects guy on Dave Letterman's Late Show. But part of that was because I was Dave's sound effects man. That elevated me to a level that Tom felt he wanted to converse with. One of my musical heroes, I'm segueing, but Tom Hanks, I never forgot it. And I tell people always what a wonderful person you are. And by the way, Tommy, I understand that Tom Hanks is one of your viewers. Anyway, and while you think about what the hell, uh, I love Steely Dan. I'm a big music fan and vintage audio, and I've been an audio man all my life, even when I was a little boy. That this was all I could do or liked. So I had a fascination with everything that makes sounds or records sounds or captures sounds. So I love Steely Dan. And they used to appear on The Late Show, and the music mix room was just adjacent to my room. This was my room. This was Mike DeLug or Harvey Goldberg's, depending on the era of the show, music mix room. So a lot of artists would come down there to hear their playback after rehearsals. By the way, my wife Beth still hates the fact that I never really want to go to concerts because I got used to going upstairs at 2 o'clock and watching any act I wanted to see, from the second or third row. And then if I really loved them, maybe getting a chance to meet them. I never forgot that. But the privileges that crew had were limitless. Just another reason to thank Dave Letterman and a lot of other wonderful people who were associated with it. But anyway, uh, Steely Dan's Donald Fagen was outside my room, and I had brought in an album of his, The Nightfly, that I had just bought, used and scratched, but I didn't care. And I brought it in thinking he might sign it to me. And uh, he was there, and I walked up to him and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Fagen, I'm Garry. I'm the sound effects guy here, and I'm a big fan of yours." And he looked at me in a perplexed way for a second. And then he said, "You do the sound effects?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You do the window and the ding and the buzz?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Garry, I'm your fan." and we actually we embraced. We hugged for a moment. Like I said, "Ooh, wow!" I said, "I brought the Nightfly. Would you sign it to me? I love it." And this is around 1994, I guess, and he signed it. Hi, Gary. It's up on the wall. It's up on the wall. But here, yeah, that's it. And it says, "Hi, Gary, Donald Fagen." And I thought it was wonderful and generous of him. And he went into the room to listen to the music. And shortly after that, one of the two guys came to me and said, "He doesn't sign for anybody. So you really got something special." And I just, so I know he's also a fan of your show, Tommy. So of your podcast. Hi, Donald.
All right, I've got one that you said you were going to tell me, and this is something that I had never heard before. We'll get back to Letterman. Back in our days at WCBS FM Solid Gold, I thought I had known every story that we had between each other, but you threw one at me. Um, it had to do with our general manager, and I
General
know you
manager.
know what it is. We'll
We'll
call
call
him
him Piedmont. Piedmont, because
Piedmont.
Bill
Yes.
Bill
Oh,
Brown, right? Bill
yes.
Brown, the great
Right.
CBS FM disc jockey, WOR FM disc jockey, and our dear friend. And he now spins records for Almighty in heaven. And when Billy used to refer to this gentleman, who was quite an elegant, well placed socially man in New York City, tall, very handsome man, and he spoke with what Bill called Larchmont Lockjaw. Uh, and
That's
and he
exactly.
called him Piedmont.
So tell us the coffee story.
Okay, so we had a Norelco coffee maker. They were very popular back in the 60s. No, sorry, the 70s. Okay, so the most important thing was our coffee pot, which we had in the back of the control room. It was on the back wall by the back phones, the hotline to the transmitter and uh, the outside
Oh
line, and
yeah.
and
Right.
all the
I remember that.
cartridges in the swivel racks, right? So that coffee machine was cooking all the time. We all had coffee. And Piedmont, who had an office way in the front, never had much to do with the technicians. He was nice to us. He was always nice to us. But he didn't. He never came in except for one thing, and that was to get coffee from our coffee maker. And I have to say, if you want to tick off audio technicians, radio engineer, whatever in the broadcast area, screw with their coffee or their snacks or their meals, and you will bring a force of anger upon you as you've never seen. Has never been. There's nothing happening between the Russians and Ukrainians. God bless the Ukrainians at this time that would even resemble how we all used to react and gripe and be PO'd about Piedmont drinking our coffee. So one day, I should also inject for the sake of accuracy. This was the 70s, and all of us were stone freaks. I mean, we would smoke on the air, we would smoke off the air. Uh, there was a lot of marijuana being consumed in those days, and for the sake of legalities, none on premises. But anyway,
None.
uh, so somebody got the idea. It was Mark, wasn't it? It was Mark. First of all, you have to
Of
understand that at this
course.
point in time, right? At this point in time, a bag of weed was $15, which I love hearing what they say today, which is now the equivalent of $3,427,000, but in today's money. But it was $15, which today I guess is about what we're used to seeing marijuana trade for. Nevertheless, uh, Mark got the idea. I'm going to fix Piedmont, and he put an entire ounce bag of weed into the coffee maker and added the coffee to it. right? We used to put in whatever we put in for the measure of coffee. And sure enough, shortly after this, in walked Piedmont for his morning cup of joe. And of course, we all knew what was happening, and he did not. And um, uh, Piedmont poured his coffee out of our big carafe. My Alexa's going off in the other room. Alexa, stop! Sometimes you got to really be firm with Alexa. I don't like to do it because she's an independent spirit, but I have to. So I don't know what causes that. Now we roll the clock ahead just about. I think he came back for a second cup. He was usually good for 2 cups.
I think I will have another cup of coffee.
Jim never has a second cup of coffee at home.
And this is what annoyed everybody. I think if he had only 1 cup, he would have slid. But he used to have two. And after he had his second cup, nobody saw him for a while. And Ellen, who was our traffic manager at the time, uh, came around to the back and said, "Did anybody see Piedmont?" And we said, "No, we haven't seen him." She said, "Well, come with me." And we went down the hall while the record played, and she brought us to his door. And there he was, head down, fast asleep on his desk.
Oh my God.
Now, I don't know if he ever really figured out what had happened, but I think he did because he never came around for the coffee again. And Mark,
Wow.
that's one of your stories.
So, quick corollary to your story. Yes, we used to have this little thing. I can't believe we're saying this, and it's going to be on the internet forever. But look, it's legal today, and they're so anyway. We used to have this thing called a peace pipe. It was this little device. They were very popular at the time, and the reason they were popular is that it had a little hole. It was like a cylinder. I'll try to find a picture of one, and the point of it was is that pot smells. The reason that pot smells like pot is that when you smoke a joint, most of the smoke goes into the air, and that's the smelly pot. But when you inhale pot and you exhale it, the smell is removed. Your lungs actually remove the smell. So the reason that this pipe was so popular was because you could inhale and no smoke came out except what you breathed out. So you could be in a public place and smoke and nobody would know because it didn't smell. So we used to come in every day. I mean, every one of us. You'd walk in, go behind the racks, take a couple of hits, boom. Bill would come in, go behind the racks. Everybody, boom, boom, boom. It was just we didn't even give it any thought. So I go behind, I take a couple of really big hits, and I'm holding it because I was young. I could hold my breath, and I'm sitting there at the board, and in walks Piedmont. And for some reason, I mean, this guy never talked to us. All right, but suddenly he came in and he started being chatty, and he's talking to me, and I'm sitting there. Yeah, oh, and now I'm going like, I don't know how long I can hold it. Please, you've got to leave because at any moment, what I envisioned was, giant puff of smoke comes out, and I'm fired. So he left just as I was about to go unconscious. I mean, I was starting to see sparklies, and he left. So I was like, oh God, that was absolutely hysterical. So now,
Well,
I want to get your perspective on a story that I know happened to me. You probably thought happened to you. I think I've told it on this show in previous episodes, and if I have, I apologize. It's the story about the button. All right, and then I want to get
oh, I know it
your
happened to
take on
you.
it.
I know it
Oh
happened to
yeah,
you.
okay,
Well,
okay. So you
I
do.
tell the
Go ahead.
story and give you credit. I always give you full credit when I relate that story to anyone because it's your story.
Okay. So give me your. I want to hear your version of the button story.
Well, I will give a brief version of the Button story because it's not mine, but in that story, I know that Piedmont was frightened of Carlos the Jackal, who in the
Oh, is
early
that what it
70s,
was?
he was the terror. It was the first international terrorist that we had really become aware of, and uh, Piedmont was convinced that the terrorists would come to New York and would want to take over a radio station for the purpose of disseminating their terroristic plans and wants. And he was also thinking that it was probable that the station that the terrorists and Carlos the Jackal would want to take over would be New York's Oldies Authority. Because if there was one thing that Carlos the Jackal appreciated, it was doo-wop music. I believe he was a Harptones fan. So, oh, but it might have been Freddie Paris or the Five Satins, who always came in as number one on the top 500 countdown from WCBS-FM. Uh, yeah, but so it was it seemed unlikely to us, but Piedmont thought it might happen. So he ordered Torchy, our chief engineer, Ciro V. Torchia, who was one of the greatest people I ever knew in broadcast, and a real engineer through and through. And you know what his greatest, in my heart, one of his greatest achievements was that he was the audio engineer at CBS Radio for the Bob and Ray show. And that when Bob
Oh
and
my
Ray were on
God.
the air, they would refer to Torchy as Ciro, and they would have characters named Ciro. So, so the button was installed by Torchy against his better judgment. He told Piedmont, "You can't install a button." Oh, Piedmont wanted a button that would kill the transmitter, and Torchy
Right.
said, "That's listen. The transmitters at Empire. We're on 6th Avenue and 53rd Street. It's not a good idea to do that. You might not be able to get it back again. It's just a terrible idea. Plus, the button will always be here. Someone could push the button." And Piedmont wouldn't hear of it. And he said, "You got to do it." So Torchy, actually, he said, "Torchy, you've got to do it." So Torchy did it. Why don't you pick up the story from here? Because this is where you come in.
Okay. That's very good. You're absolutely right. So now, see, the way I remember it and the way I tell it is I also never understood why he was so obsessed with terrorism, considering that terrorism really wasn't a thing back then, with the exception of Munich. It just didn't happen. So my thought was that maybe the terrorists hated Chuck Berry, or maybe they loved Chuck Berry and they wanted more Chuck Berry. We never knew. But I remember that they put this button up, and the scenario was the way I envisioned it is that as the terrorists, okay, Carlos the Jackal and his minions are coming down the hall, shooting me in the back, or you, or Mark, or anybody, our last act in life was to reach our bloodied hand up and push the button, killing the transmitter and denying the terrorists any more Chuck Berry, or in this case,
And saving the
whatever doo
world.
wop, and saving the world, knowing that I went out in a blaze of glory. So now, I don't know how it was, like a year, maybe 2 years. That button was there every day. Now, you're one of the few people that can understand this. We're engineers. Our job is to push buttons. Okay, that's our job. We push buttons, and this was a button that we couldn't push, and I wanted to push that button. I really wanted to push that button, but I couldn't, of course, because if I did, we'd be taking a $38 million a year network radio station off the air. And I don't know about you, but I think that Piedmont and other executives would have frowned upon this. So it festered. Now I don't know how long it was, but it was a Sunday night. It was a Sunday night, 3 in the morning. Nobody was there. I was all by myself, and the tech phone rang. You remember we had a normal phone system, then we had a technical phone system that would connect all of the engineers and television and radio, and it was our own
The
private phone
PL.
system. The PL, that's what it was. So the guy goes, "This is the transmitter." I go, "Oh, hello." He goes, "Do you have a kill switch for the transmitter there?" And I go, "Yeah, now that you mention it, we do." He says, "Push it." I went, "I can't do that. If I push it, it'll take the transmitter off the air." He says, "Oh, for Christ's sakes, push the fucking button." And now it's like, I could do it. It's like, and I got to tell you, I milked it. I relished it. I said, "Wow, I'm going to get to push the button." So I walked over and I pushed the button. And the guy said, "Yeah, I didn't think that worked. All right, goodbye." And he hung it up. And I'm going like, "What? What?" So I go behind the rack and I move all the wires. And there's the back of the button. Nothing's hooked up to it. It's just a friggin' button. So I go to Torchy the next day and I tell him, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I told Piedmont it was illegal. He said he wanted a button, so I put a button in." I said, "No, I knew nobody would ever actually press it because they thought it would take the transmitter off the air." True story. Okay, we've ran way over, but that's okay. This was absolutely hysterical. Gary, you've got to come back. We haven't even gotten to the years that we did the Joan Rivers show together. And I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
I remember
Uh,
a lot of weird stuff that happened there. So, uh, thank you for our first show, one of many. You brought back so much memories. I've wanted to do this with all my old friends. I've got you. I've got Joe Marcus. Hopefully, I can find more and more people. This has been absolutely great, but unfortunately, now it's time for the mandatory plugs. Which of course is Serendipity Seeking Intelligent Life on Earth, Gary and Marilyn's blog that I contribute to. A half-hour radio show, the cult hit from the 80s is still here. Voicescapes Audio Theater, my theater group for the best in audio comedy and drama. And of course, my sister podcast, Get Off My Lawn, with Tom Curley, where we talk about life, the universe, and everything. Gary, this has been awesome. We'll see you again. Normally, we do this show with my co-host, my partner in crime, Garry Armstrong. But today we have a special treat. We are doing the show with one of my oldest friends, my brother from another mother, and we have to do it again. Da, 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 da. I do this every fucking week. But today we've got a special treat. The other Gary in my life, my brother from another mother and another father, and quite frankly, another religion, Garry Armstrong. Gary, welcome to the show, and how the hell are you today?
I don't know. You got to call Garry Armstrong and ask him because that's what you just called me.
You gotta be fucking kidding me!
Yeah.